Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about what is going down in Chicago because the head of their teachers union, who has previously condemned private schools and charter schools as racist segregation academies that are meant to uphold white supremacy, unsurprisingly took her son out of the public schools and is sending him to a private school because she believes that she gets to go to those better schools, but your kids need to be stuck in the public schools, and if you disagree with it, guess what? You're an evil white racist. Shut your face with your evil white racism. There's a CNN segment where they called this out. It's absolutely hilarious. The local media is on her, and her excuses are such an adequate defense of school choice. You would think that this was a parody of a teachers union person being caught in this situation, but I assure you it is in fact real. Now, before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Tonight, the head of the Chicago Teachers Union is facing intense backlash after it was revealed that her eldest son is enrolled in a private Catholic school. Now, the reason that this is at all controversial for some people is because Stacy Davis Gates has championed the city's public school system while consistently voicing strong opposition to private education. Now, last year, she underscored her position on the issue, saying, quote, "I can't advocate on behalf of public education without it taking root in my own household."
Now, I have to say, honestly, every one of her quotes are just magical, especially given the current circumstances and the fact that she was outed for sending her kid to private school. Because I didn't say that she wasn't allowed to send her kid to private school. I didn't say that she couldn't be the head of the teachers union without actually having her kids in public schools. She said it. She said it had to take root in her own home. And guess what? When push came to shove, when she wanted better opportunity for her kid, she decided to go with a private Catholic school.
What happened here? You've likened in the past private schools of today to, quote, segregation academies of the Jim Crow South. Why then send your child to a private school after speaking out so publicly against them?
Before Stacy ends up answering that question, which by the way, you know her answer is going to be objectively trash, I just want to read an additional quote that was not included in this opener so you can understand that this wasn't a one-off, her comparing any kind of private school to evil white racism and to segregation. In response to somebody claiming that school choice for young black kids was a civil rights issue, she wrote the following: "School choice was actually the choice of racists. It was created to avoid integrating schools with black children. Now it's the civil rights struggle of our generation. Hashtag bye-bye." So first of all, I just want to point out that this woman is the head of the teachers union in Chicago, and this is how she writes. Unsurprisingly, Chicago students take after their union boss and also do poorly on reading and writing. So yeah, unsurprising all the way around. But again, she has made it clear that school choice, sending your kid to private schools, evil white racism, you're an evil white racist if you want to do it. Why don't you cut it out with your evil white racism?
I didn't speak out against private schools. I spoke out against school choice. School choice and private schools are two different entities.
In your tweet, you describe basically you've described private schools of the North. That was literally your language. But you've also said this, that school choice was the choice of racists. I think at the end of the day, people are asking here about whether the rhetoric matches your actions. What do you say to them?
So she says, "I never criticized private schools. What are you even talking about, you dumb idiot? What I criticized was school choice, which is completely different for private schools. You see, in a normal traditional private school model, when you are a union boss and you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars forcing kids to stay in failing public schools, you have excess money and you can use that to send your child to a luxurious private school so your child doesn't have to be impacted with the policies that you are advocating for. But if you want a scholarship, if you want some of the money that is assigned for your student in the public schools, a percentage of it, not even all of it, to go for that scholarship so you can send your kid to a private school. You know, if you're poor, if you're a pleb, then you don't get that. That's what she's against. She gets to go because she has the money, making sure your kids don't get to go. Don't you get it?
Well, I would say that if we understand the desegregation of schools post Brown v. the Board of Education, we also understand that school districts in the South in particular closed down entire school districts, offered money to families, white families, so they could get accepted into private schools. That is, in fact, the origin of school choice in America.
So as pointed out by this CNN reporter, and credit where credit is due, these criticisms were initially of the North, but as you can see, the union boss is pivoting to the South, saying that this is all about evil white racism. Wow, aren't you an evil white racist? But the thing is that we know that the people who take advantage of school choice happen to be poorer and more black students than the general population. So they are going into these charter schools because parents want to get their kids out of the schools, and right now they have to go through a lottery specifically because of people like this union boss that are doing everything possible to shut down as many charter schools as humanly possible and prevent new ones from opening. So her position essentially is, if you have a failing public school, if there's crime, if there's violence, if they're not teaching your kids anything, then you need to stay there. We need to overspend on your students in that school. But if you want to go to another school, you better have the money in order to pay for it, because none of that money allocated for your child's education is yours. It's hers. It belongs to her and her union members. And as long as the charter schools are ununionized, then she's always going to be opposed to them.
And I know that the right wing wants to obscure that in the same way that they want to tell us that slavery was a job training program.
I mean, just think about how absurd that answer is. She said that white people are trying to tell black people that slavery was job training. No, it wasn't. Nobody's saying that. That is not an argument being put forward by anyone. You just made that up. You're trying to invoke slavery here when you yourself have taken your son out of the public school system because they're inadequate to serve your family's needs, and you're denying other people as a job, you're getting paid to do this, that same option. You're denying poor people the chance to have scholarships to choose their own schools. And again, this is pretty obvious. It's one of the most no-brainer issues. If the public schools are really better, if the public schools really do serve the needs of the children and not of the members of the teachers union, then the parents wouldn't take this option. But what she fears is that the parents will end up ruining her racket and take this option.
Look, I understand the history that you're talking about, and I myself attended public school my entire life. But I think one of the issues here is actually something that you yourself raised. You wrote a letter to your colleagues and you said that our critics want you to believe that, quote, school choice is a black and white issue that lacks nuance and hard choices for people like us, black families, especially when you are parenting a black boy in America. You wrote that to explain why you chose to take your child out of public school.
Again, credit where credit is due to the CNN reporter, who, by the way, throws in the little bit of a jab that she went to public schools her whole life. By the way, so did I. But she reads her quote about how it's no longer a black and white issue, how there's nuance in it, and honestly, you have to deal with these circumstances, especially when you're raising a black boy. So when conservatives point out that black people disproportionately in poverty are the ones taking advantage of these school choice programs, and parents are lining up around the block in order to win these lotteries because people like her limit the seats, then that's evil white racism. They're trying to trick your black kids with their evil white racism. Remember segregation. Remember that time that some white person out there in the ether, some mythical white evil white racist, said that the slavery was job training. That's definitely related to what we're talking about. But when it's her kid, wait a minute. This is not a black and white issue. What are you even talking about? There's nuance in it. There's so much nuance that Nuance Row is summoned up from the ether in order to explain to you all the different balances of this issue. What do you mean this is about racism? But when you're a parent to a black boy, the rules don't apply to you. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. She is above the rules because she makes the rules because she's the union boss. boss, and you need to shut up. If you disagree with her, you're racist. If you want her kid to stop attending private school, guess what? You're racist. If you want her to live up to her standards, guess what? You're also racist. And if you want other black kids and other black families to have the same options that she had, congratulations, you're also racist. So every single category leads you to your evil white racism. So sit down and shut up. And by the way, credit where credit is due for CNN sitting a black woman opposite her for this debate, because you know for a fact the first thing she would go to if this was any other demographic of person was that she's anti-black, she's an evil white racist. Oh my god, evil white racist CNN with their evil white racism.
Why not afford that nuance to the families who might live in the south side of Chicago and in other major cities, and they want the same choice that you were able to afford to give to your child?
So a couple of things. Number one, I have 3 children, and all 3 children have attended public school, and my youngest 2 are still public school students. The second thing is that over 90% of my neighbors in my zip code send their children into schools outside of our zip code, outside of our neighborhood.
So her tactic, if you guys aren't following, is that she sent her younger children to public schools. She sent her son that we're talking about to a public school when he was younger, but now that, you know, he's in high school and he wants to play sports and he wants to potentially get a scholarship to university, she's not sending her kid to the hellhole Chicago high schools. She's sending him to a better school. Presumably, she would do the same for her 2 daughters. But also, it's kind of hilarious that she's talking about how, oh, the people in my zip code, in my neighborhood, they send their kids to a school outside of the zip code. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. And that's a big issue for Chicagoans, that parents gotta send their children to schools that are outside of their zip code. I mean, that's really a big problem. Now, by the way, as the head of the teachers union, she's against having you be able to choose where you send your kids. If a charter school opened up in their zip code right down the street, she would be against that. But you know, that's really something that you need to think about and you need to ponder. Are you distracted yet from the issue that you're actually bringing up? Have I deflected enough? I just want to say, and maybe I could throw this out there, evil white racism, and try to run away.
Quite frankly, this is an issue, especially for middle-class black families all across this country, where the public accommodation is obsolete, just like the grocery store in our communities is obsolete, just like the healthcare provisions in our community are obsolete.
Look, I know she works for the teachers union, so she has to defend and simp for the public schools, but I find it hilarious that she says that the public accommodations, as in the public schools, that she will not let other kids get scholarships to go out of, are obsolete in one breath. Then she compares it to the grocery store in her neighborhood. The grocery store is not nice enough. Now, granted, in these areas of Chicago, the grocery stores are closing down due to rampant theft, due to the fact that they actually defunded the police. And then she claims some mythical defunding of education that never occurred. There is no data to back this up. And by the way, increasing the funding or trying to normalize the funding to the same level as the other public schools in the wealthier, whiter areas has actually been tried before in the state of New Jersey, another state that is heavily controlled by the teachers union. They had a series of Supreme Court decisions called the Abbott decisions, and guess what? This did not improve any of the failing schools. However, it did give teachers unions a lot more money in order to pocket, in order to deflect, in order to divert, because the goal of the teachers union fundamentally is to represent the members. This should be surprising to no one. And I'm not even saying that that makes them inherently bad. They're just built that way. That's what the union is supposed to do. They don't give a damn about your kids, because if the kids come into conflict with protecting members of the teachers union, guess what? They're not a union for your kids, and we need to get that through our heads. They're always going to go with the members of their union.
The public accommodation has to be invested and resourced in black communities, because we have been defunded and destabilized in those same communities. So when we talk about choice, Abby, what we're talking about is a decision between Frosted Flakes and Cheerios. But in Chicago, and especially in black neighborhoods, it's a decision with 0 and 0. And that's not a choice. That is, quite frankly, an ultimatum.
So first of all, there's a huge difference between Cheerios and Frosted Flakes. Frosted Flakes are just covered in sugar. Cheerios, on the other hand, are not, and they're rated as one of those heart-healthy foods, so you're just wrong right there. And again, if the choice is between 0 and 0, like she's leveling the charter schools as the same level as the public schools, then you should have nothing to worry about. What she fears is that the charter schools, like some across this country, are significantly better than the public schools, will do better with kids in worse educational shape and worse financial shape than the public schools, as we've seen with KIPP Academy and Success Academy in New York and New Jersey. And she does not want that getting out there to the parents because she doesn't want them to want to shop around. So this is propaganda. It makes no sense on its face. And again, even if the schools are equivalent in terms of educational ability, if the charter schools are safer, less criminal, parents might still want to send their kids there because that has additional value.
But I do wonder, do you regret your own rhetoric here?
Regret rhetoric. What I've said are facts. Again, I'm a history teacher.
I think
before,
that
hold
the
on for a
rhetoric
second,
that
Abby.
let me explain my question.
So I love this question about her potentially regretting her past rhetoric. Obviously, the answer is no, because again, she says what she says to benefit her in the moment that she's saying it. There's no principle here at all whatsoever. But I do like this follow-up question and then the answer and then the deflection to evil white racism and how all of a sudden it's nuanced when it comes to her kid. But before, charter schools were definitely racist, and it's what segregations wanted, and it's like saying slavery is job training.
Do you think that your rhetoric at some point went too far when you are making a choice, because perhaps, I assume you can afford to do that a lot of Chicago parents don't, because they can't afford it. And proponents of school choice say the state should have a role in helping those families who can't afford it make the same choice that you did for your family.
So a couple of things, Abby. It is nuanced in Chicago. Like I've said, we have been destabilized and defunded in our Black communities. When people speak of choice, they are speaking of two different things that are of comparative nature. What we are faced with in Chicago is an absence of a choice, is an absence of resources. And furthermore, school choice in this country has been anchored to a very racist and angry right wing.
This defunding that she's talking about is completely made up. It's imagined. It does not exist. If you look at per pupil spending for the city of Chicago, they spend $29,000 per pupil. Let me say that again. $29,000 per pupil in the city of Chicago. This is not only at the top of the United States of America, this is at the top of the world in terms of per pupil spending, and she's talking about defunding. She is lying to you right now, lying to your face. Call this out. Point this out to her. There has not been a removal of resources from the Chicago public school system. However, the way that they allocate resources based on the teachers union is quite sketchy. If you look at a chart that actually separates out teacher salary and benefits, and specifically pension benefits, which are guaranteed, from classroom spending, eventually we're going to get to the point where spending on what goes into the classroom is going to drop due to the insane increase of the cost of the Chicago pensions, which, by the way, she's not worried about because that is for her members. That's her goal. And she'll use that to complain and ask for more money so that she can steal more from your children's future and more from the future taxpayers in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago.
I can show you a whole host of emails that have come to me and my family detailing that level of violence and racism.
She talks about how she's getting all these emails, and these emails have evil white racism in this, and somehow this ties into the evil white racism that she was talking about in the charter schools, which tied to this imagined white person who says slavery was a jobs program for Black people. And just so you know, this all somehow proves evil white racism. But the way that the CNN reporter responds to this is just money. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
So the real scandal, Abby, is why in 2023, Black families in Chicago and across this country have to deal with such severe inequities and such high stakes.
I totally agree that that is a scandal, but I also think that what you just described for your son is choice that you made for your family, and I think that's what your critics are pointing out here.
100%. She is making the argument for school choice for her, even though she doesn't want your kids to have access to it. It's good for her. She has the money to do it because she makes a lot of money forcing your kids into failing public schools if you're a resident of Chicago. But again, those rules don't apply to her because she's better than you, and her kid wanted to play soccer. Her kid wanted to be a soccer superstar, maybe get a scholarship to college, maybe be accepted somewhere. And honestly, the schools that she's protecting, that she's forcing your kids into, that she's getting all this money for while pretending that they're defunded, obviously they're not going to be able to get her kid into a good college because those schools are horrible. So you need to send your kids there, but she's better than you. She's your elite. She is your master, so just obey her and do whatever she says, because honestly, you should not have the same level of choice as she does because you don't make as much money as her. Therefore, you're worth less than her. You're actually worthless as a parent, and your opinion is actually worthless. So yeah, this is really what we're doing right here. We're praising CNN for pointing out the absurdity of this person's position, but more importantly, we're shining a light on what's actually going on in our public school system and how the people who pretend to care the hardest about your kids don't at all, and they're never going to love your kids the way that they love theirs. And again, I'm not against her sending her kid to private school. I understand if you have the money and you want to do that, you want to do what's best for a kid. What I'm against is her preventing poor kids in Chicago from getting scholarships to do the same. What I'm against is her trying to protect failing teachers and failing schools and doing everything in her power to oppose any kind of alternative that might do better for the children in the city of Chicago that she's pretending to care about. Now, a lot of people are talking about the hypocrisy, and if you don't get past level 1 of this conversation and you just focus on her rhetoric, what she said in the past versus what she does with her own son, then you might hit that level. But the thing is, this isn't really hypocrisy. She is not representing the children in Chicago public schools. She is representing the teachers union. Her job is to secure jobs for the members of the teachers union and squash any threat to those jobs. It has nothing to do with the children. Any hiding behind the children is only strategic. This is why, without hesitation, she was able to send her kid to a private school, and the only reason she covered it up was due to public backlash. But it's actually not hypocritical because, again, it has nothing to do with the kids. She doesn't care about the kids. She is paid specifically to put the teachers above the children. So when it comes to her own child, obviously she's going to care more about them. She's working in part for her children's future. So if you're pointing out hypocrisy, yeah, that's a base level analysis, but it goes far beyond that because her position entails that she doesn't give a damn about the children. Period, point blank, full stop. You get what I'm saying? I don't think I can make it more clear if I tried, but hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the teachers union, doing teachers union stuff. Till next time.